Four friends, Emily, Jake, Laura, and Chris, were driving along a narrow, winding mountain road through the isolated forests of Tennessee. The evening sun had already slipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and the shadows of the tall trees loomed over the road. The car rattled gently along the rough dirt path, and apart from the engine's low hum, the forest around them was engulfed in an eerie silence. Emily sat in the back seat, staring anxiously out the window, feeling a growing sense of unease she couldn't quite explain. The strange quietness of nature and the approaching darkness had begun to unsettle her deeply. At the wheel was Emily's boyfriend Jake, enthusiastically talking about their plans for the weekend at the mountain cabin they'd rented. With his natural leadership and cheerful demeanor, he tried to ease the tension that hung in the air. Emily tried her best to mirror his excitement, but couldn't shake off the weight pressing on her chest. In the passenger seat, Laura noticed Emily's distress. As her best friend, Laura was empathetic and sensitive, immediately picking up on Emily's silent nervousness as she bit her lip and stared into the forest. Gently, Laura reached back and placed a comforting hand over Emily's, offering a reassuring smile. Meanwhile, Chris, sitting beside Emily in the back seat, was busy examining the map. Known for his humorous, carefree personality, he cracked a joke to lighten the mood. "I hope you guys aren't taking me on some wild bear hunt or something," he chuckled. By the time they arrived at the cabin, night had fully set in. The small wooden cottage stood isolated among towering pine trees, with no other buildings in sight. As they stepped out of the car, the earthy sense of damp soil and pine resin greeted them, but even this usually calming aroma couldn't ease Emily's growing anxiety. The forest rustled softly with a gentle breeze, and in the distance, a lone owl hooted. These subtle sounds only deepened the sense of isolation around them. Inside, it was obvious the cabin hadn't been used for quite some time. Dusty shelves and old furniture emerged in the dim light. Jake lit a few lamps and got the small fireplace going, bringing a bit of warmth and comfort as the wood crackled gently. Laura and Chris quickly unpacked their supplies in the kitchen area, preparing something to snack on, while Emily cautiously explored the cabin. The heavy wooden beams creaked occasionally, casting flickering shadows onto the walls. After a short while, the four friends gathered around the fireplace. Jake began enthusiastically describing the hiking trip he planned for the following day, talking excitedly about the natural beauty surrounding them. Chris interjected jokingly, "Maybe we'll run into Tennessee's very own Bigfoot tonight, huh?" Laura playfully rolled her eyes at him. "Stop trying to scare Emily." Emily managed a weak smile, trying to share in her friend's laughter, but her mind was elsewhere, gazing into the dark forest through the window, unable to shake off the unsettling feeling inside her. As the night wore on, exhaustion gradually overtook the group, and they decided to sleep. Emily and Jake would share the small bedroom at the back of the cabin, while Laura and Chris settled into the living room. Laura on the sofa, and Chris on some blankets laid out on the floor. Before laying down, Jake gently embraced Emily, stroking her hair softly, whispering reassuringly, "Don't worry, sweetheart. It's just the silence you're not used to. I'm here with you." Emily rested her head against his chest, closed her eyes, but couldn't completely shake the strange feeling that lingered. Jake soon fell into a deep sleep, while Emily lay awake, staring up at the wooden ceiling beams. In the pitch-black darkness, time seemed to slow. Just as Emily was finally drifting off to sleep, she jolted awake to a terrifying scream coming from deep within the forest. It was a chilling cry, neither human nor animal, filling the cabin and abruptly cutting off into silence. Emily's heart raced, panic gripping her chest. She leapt from the bed, ran to the window, and stared into the darkness, but saw nothing. The forest remained disturbingly still, as if the scream had never happened. Trembling, Emily rushed back to Jake and shook him awake. "Jake, did you hear that? There was a terrible scream just now," she whispered frantically. Jake sat up groggily, listening carefully, but the cabin and forest had returned to complete silence. Laura and Chris appeared in the bedroom doorway, clearly awakened by Emily's distress. "What's going on?" Chris asked, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "I heard a scream out in the forest. It wasn't human or animal," Emily whispered anxiously. Jake listened again, but heard nothing more. Maybe it was an owl or the wind, he murmured softly, trying to comfort her. They stood there uneasily for a moment before Jake finally broke the silence again. "Let's try to get some sleep. Everything will be normal in the morning," he reassured everyone. Chris nodded, yawning slightly. "Yeah, probably nothing to worry about." Though hesitant, they all returned to their beds. Emily, however, could not sleep easily, spending the rest of the night staring anxiously at the ceiling, replaying the mysterious scream over and over in her mind. The next morning seemed ordinary enough. In the light of day, the friends rationalized the unsettling sound as just some wild animal. They spent the day hiking through the beautiful forest trails, letting the warmth of the sun ease their nerves. Still, Emily's uneasy feeling never fully dissipated. As evening approached and the sun dipped below the horizon once again, Emily felt the familiar dread return. With the fading daylight, the forest again fell into a haunting silence. They hastily ate their dinner and locked the doors and windows securely. After the previous night's unsettling experience, they decided to sleep together in the living room by the fireplace. Despite their fatigue, none of them felt comfortable enough to sleep easily. Hours passed slowly and darkness fully enveloped the cabin. Laura and Chris had eventually drifted off on the couch, while Jake stared silently at the dying embers in the fireplace, almost as if standing guard. Emily, still wide awake, listened intently to every creak and rustle. Suddenly, she heard a faint crack of a twig breaking outside. Her heart racing, she turned her gaze to the window. There, among the trees, she saw two glowing red eyes staring directly at her. They were almost at human height, unmoving, fixated on her with a menacing stillness. Emily froze in terror. Gathering her strength after a few seconds, Emily managed to whisper shakily, "Jake!" Then she screamed, "There's someone at the window!" Instantly, everyone jolted awake. Jake rushed towards the window, but as soon as he approached, the red eyes vanished into the night. Chris stood up unsteadily, grabbing a large kitchen knife, while Laura clung tightly to Emily's arm, trembling with fear. Jake picked up a thick piece of firewood from beside the fireplace, gripping it defensively. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. "What did you see, Emily?" Jake asked sharply, scanning the darkness outside. "Red eyes! It was watching us," she whispered shakily. Jake's brow furrowed in deep concern. At that moment, a scratching noise erupted against the back wall of the cabin, as if something with sharp claws was dragging against the wood. Then the rear door suddenly rattled violently as something outside tried to force its way in. A nauseating stench filled the room, a rotten, foul odor that made their stomachs churn. Chris grimaced, covering his nose while Laura took a terrified step back. Seconds later, the front door exploded inward under an enormous force, splintering off its hinges and landing with a crash. A monstrous figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, massive, nearly 7 feet tall, covered in dark matted fur. Its piercing red eyes glowed, and it let out a guttural, horrifying growl. The creature opened its jaws wide and unleashed a deafening, primal scream that shook the cabin walls, causing everyone to cover their ears. Emily sank to the ground, paralyzed by fear, as Jake and Chris desperately searched for what to do next. In a split second, the creature lunged inside. With incredible strength, it slammed Jake into the wall and knocked Chris to the floor, sending his knife skidding away. Laura screamed and scrambled backward in horror. Before anyone could react further, the creature seized Emily in its powerful grip and stormed back out into the darkness. Emily's screams echoed into the night, fading quickly as she disappeared into the forest. "Emily!" Jake shouted desperately, regaining his footing and running after them without hesitation. Chris stumbled to his feet and followed quickly. Laura close behind, tears streaming down her face. Branches whipped their faces, rocks and uneven ground slowed their steps, but Jake kept running, frantically calling Emily's name. After several panicked moments, Emily's screams suddenly stopped, plunging the forest back into an ominous silence. Jake halted, gasping for breath, uncertain where to go next. Suddenly, a flickering flashlight beam appeared through the trees. An elderly man emerged from the shadows, holding a shotgun, cautiously approaching them. The group recoiled at first, but the man spoke calmly. "Looks like you folks need some help." Jake immediately stepped forward, pleading, "Please! A creature just took my girlfriend. We don't know what to do." The man nodded solemnly. "I heard. I've tracked this beast for years. Folks around here call it the Tennessee Wildman. Without another word, the old man led them onward, warning softly, "Stay quiet and stay behind me." Carefully tracking broken branches and trampled bushes, the old man guided the friends deeper into the dark forest. After several tense minutes, they faintly heard Emily's soft moaning. Jake's instinct was to rush forward immediately, but the old man stopped him, raising his hand silently to urge caution. Moments later, they arrived at a small cave opening at the base of a rocky slope. A damp, musty, sickening stench wafted out from the darkness within. The elderly man outlined the plan quickly. "I'll go first and distract the creature. When I do, grab your friend and run." Jake nodded anxiously as the old man stepped carefully into the cave, raising his shotgun. Jake followed closely behind. Inside, the cave widened into a dark chamber. As the flashlight swept across the walls, it illuminated Emily, slumped weakly against the stone wall. She was pale, tear-streaked, but appeared mostly unharmed. A few feet away from her, the massive creature squatted, its back facing the entrance, completely focused on its prey. Jake felt his heart pounding furiously, a mix of rage and terror building within him. The old man raised his shotgun slowly, aiming carefully, but as he shifted his weight, a small stone scraped the cave floor, making a faint sound. The creature instantly whirled around, its fiery red eyes piercing the darkness, locking onto them with pure hatred. Without hesitation, the old man squeezed the trigger, and a deafening blast echoed through the cave. The shot tore into the creature's shoulder, making it howl in pain, blood seeping from the wound. Enraged, it lunged violently forward, slamming the old hunter against the cave wall, knocking the shotgun from his grasp. Jake seized the moment, rushing to Emily and pulling her desperately toward the cave entrance. The creature, preparing to finish off the hunter, turned angrily back toward them. Jake swiftly grabbed the shotgun lying on the ground and swung it with all his strength, striking the beast's head. The creature staggered, dazed. Recovering his strength, the elderly hunter quickly drew a large knife from his belt and thrust it deeply into the monster's chest. With a final guttural roar, the Tennessee Wildman collapsed onto the cave floor, motionless. "Emily's okay," Jake shouted urgently as he helped her toward the entrance. Laura and Chris ran to meet them, embracing Emily tightly, tears streaming down their faces. Shaken but relieved, the four friends were reunited. Guided by the old hunter, they swiftly made their way out of the forest as dawn began to break over the eastern horizon. Before long, they reached their car near the cabin. Jake turned to the old man, expressing sincere gratitude. The hunter simply nodded quietly, waving farewell before disappearing back into the forest. As their vehicle rumbled down the narrow dirt road, sunlight finally broke through the trees, washing away the terror of that night. The nightmare had ended, and the legend of the Tennessee Wildman had finally met its conclusion. Though none of them would ever forget that terrifying experience, at least they were alive, and together. They never returned to those mountains again. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling stories.